So Michaela and I are trying to record these next 2 episodes of Hermes Historia, but it's been a little while. We both have had a ton of stuff going on, and I am trying to move across the country. And then there's extenuating circumstances in my life that I'm not prepared to yet announce on mic. But I basically am losing my whole damn mind. And so this is the introduction. This is Hermes Historia while we find our footing. It's still free anyway until we figure out also the subscription that's coming. So keep enjoying these Hermes Historia episodes. Yeah, Michaela, why don't you take it away? What are we talking about today?
Hi. So because it's, spooky season, I had to pick spooky topics.
I would have been offended if you didn't.
I
you
know.
might have been fired. That might have been the thing that did
Originally,
it.
I was going to do something else for this first one, but and then I decided I was going to do that next month instead. So here we are.
I support this.
Yeah, I know. I like the spookiness too, as you know.
No.
Just a little bit. Just a touch. So, for this first one, we're going to talk about Greek funerary practices.
Oh, hell yes.
Yes. So, these practices, they have,
see, okay, this is the problem is I immediately want to jump in with a joke question. And so I'm going to. I want you to tell the listeners just how important the coins on the eyelids were, because every movie from the ancient Greek world, everything would lead us to believe that the only way to pass into the underworld is to have coins placed over your eyelids. So tell us all about that incredibly accurate portrayal of the ancient Greek funerary practices, Michaela.
Of all my research into Greek funerary practices, and all of my schooling, I have never actually once encountered coins with corpses.
Great. It's because it's on the eyes in the movies. Thank you.
Yeah, or in the mouth, but
right,
no.
Yeah. Right, yeah, it's not, in the mouth. But either way, it's, that coin to pay the ferryman.
Maybe one person did it and someone got, I don't know.
They wrote it into 3 myths. And so the Western culture then decided that was the only way they did anything. Yeah. All right.
We dug them up, didn't find any coins. And they were like, these are all mistakes then, I guess. I've never encountered
It's not a big
coins.
part. Yeah.
No, not
Got
at
it.
all.
So tell us about the real one.
So, it's changed a lot throughout all of, sort of antique history.
Years, yeah.
Yeah, it's it bounces around in a way that I find really interesting, where there doesn't seem to be an actual consistency to what the proper practices are. There wasn't consistency on if inhumation, which is actual burial of the body in the ground, or cremation was preferred. They really just seem to change based on preference throughout time.
I feel like it'd be a lot about how easy, how practical it is too, right?
Cremation's expensive.
Yeah, well, and also if your land isn't easy to be buried in too, there's so many different things going on. So yeah, it makes sense if they're just kind of what can we do at any given time?
Yeah, and it just, and I mean, even if we look at Mycenae, for example, we have the grave circles where people were buried bodies completely in the ground, and then we get other areas where it's they're being cremated. And within a relatively short time frame. So it's just not consistent in a way that I think is comfortable to us, but I kind of like that. I don't know why.
I mean, I like it because it just seems practical, and to me, I mean, everything I love about ancient Greece is that it predates all the Christian stuff that we've been led to believe is the way to do things, and I like that it's just no, so long as the body was honored in some way, we've done our duty, the person is gone, that you don't, there's not so much pressure placed upon the survivors.
Yeah. Throw grandpa in the hole. It's fine.
I mean, we said goodbye, and then we honor and we appreciate grandpa, and then we throw him in the hole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's fine. So through all these periods, various grave goods are put in the graves too. This is relatively common. We see marking of the graves either done with marble or stone stelae. Sometimes they're marked with just pots, just a real big, nice looking pot. Put it there. that's where someone is buried.
Well, and it's a show of gratitude regardless, right?
Yeah, it's just the way they did it.
Yeah.
Mourning always accompanied death. Mourning was a big deal, actually. That's fun.
Oh, yeah. That makes it
Yes.
into the myths.
Yeah. So we have these three components for funerary practices. We have the mourning processes, the actual burial, and then the way the graves are marked. So immediately after death, someone perishes for one reason or another. The most ideal case at home, hopefully, not what am I writing? And not being poked by the dangerous end of a spear on the battlefield. And
I
the
mean, yeah, that's a
prothesis.
preference.
Yeah, I mean, at least then you can do the burial stuff right.
Yeah.
If you're at
And
home
your
versus on the
family's
battlefield.
there. And
Yeah,
yeah.
it's nice. So after the death, the prothesis, or literally just the laying out, begins. It would be done on a bier of some sort. A bier is just like a bed. And apparently the body would be positioned so that the feet face towards the door. Like, this is the way we go. Go this way. Don't stay in the home. Go out this way. Because dead bodies, no matter how much we love them, the person who once inhabited them, loved the person who was once in them, were very polluting. So you didn't want these things to stick around in your home.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing that would be done after the laying out is that the people who attended to the body would then close the eyes and mouth. The attendants were typically women in the most ideal of cases. It didn't have to be. If you don't have any women in your family, somebody still has to do it. If you're on the battlefield, someone still has to do it.
It sounds like it would be just like the carers.
Yeah, and women are often are that role in antiquity.
Yeah.
They are the ones who take care of the domestic sphere, which includes death. That's part of it. It happens in the family.
Well, it makes me think of in the Iliad too, because I mean, the people I'm thinking of just like, the important deaths, and the people I most associate with like any kind of practices or caring is like Nestor, and then the like actual healers like Machaon, and I forget the other one. Like, you have these roles where there aren't women, but there are the carers that are sort of assigned.
Yeah, and even in the Iliad at the end, when with Hector's funeral,
right,
we have Helen, Andromache, and Hecuba, who are the ones who are leading it and taking charge and how it processes. And it's just women are responsible for the family in antiquity. That's their primary role. My good son, get off the desk.
That was a cat. Let's just make that clear.
Yes.
There's no video, Michaela. My good son, get off my desk.
He's just in front of my screen. I can't see anything. So there is some indication from Pinakes, which I think we talked about last month. They're basically just terracotta, flat pieces of art that have images on them. So Pinakes from the 7th and 6th centuries, that there could have been a linen cloth that would be used, that would be strapped underneath the chin and then behind the head in order to keep the jaw shut. We don't have any archaeological evidence for this because linen, of course, doesn't survive. We do, though, have gold bands from Mycenae that could have served the same purpose, which I find interesting. Mm-hmm. So the body would be washed and cleaned, preferably with water from a running source, as that was seen as better. And then it would be anointed with oil and clothed in an edema, or a red or white robe. Aromatic plants would be laid out on the bier with the body. And then the body would eventually be covered with a sheet called an epiblema. Like I said, dead bodies are very polluting to the environment. So any sort of cleansing or purifying acts were important.
Well, and the herbs and stuff is all about the smell, right? And just to the listeners, that's where the myth of Hades and Minthe is coming in. Is purely that there was this association with mint because it's so aromatic, and it would just be it would be the best or one of the best things to cover up the smell of a dead body. And then so they just this sort of after effect, because it's not really surviving in any kind of real mythos. It's just sort of in Pausanias is someone told me this thing once. And so it's just an interesting connection to make, and also people love to hear about Hades and
We love
Persephone and
Hades.
Minthe. So Lore Olympus
Yeah.
forever.
And so that same water that would be used, well, the same water from the same source, they
Right.
would also be available in the household, and people who would come visit after the death could dip plants into the water and then like sprinkle it about them as a way to purify themselves when they were leaving the space,
Yeah.
because
Oh,
that space is still, no matter what you do to try to keep it cleansed, in the moment when the body is still there, it's still considered polluted. So when you
yeah.
leave, you gotta cleanse yourself and, sprinkle yourself with a little bit of water from a twig, and you're fine. Off you go. And then the final thing that would be done to the body is that it would be decorated with any sort of jewelry, plants, clothing, anything to make it nice. This is something we do
So,
too.
question about that, because it stood out to me. I mean, the Mycenaeans are sort of the one-off, but like they weren't like providing them with loads of riches, right? Like it wasn't like the Egyptians. Like there was much more of like a practicality. Like they would be given a couple of things to show gratitude, but people wouldn't be like tossing their entire wealth into the tombs, right? I mean, again, the Mycenaeans I think did to an extent for a time period at least, but like beyond that,
I think it would depend on your social class and what you have to give.
right? But
If
then, so it's still this kind of same thing. You'd be giving kind of what you can rather than
Yes.
like everything you have.
Exactly. And it would be more about, giving the stuff that was important to the person.
Right.
And sort of like, because there's a sense that stays with them into the underworld. We one thing I remember from school is we see a lot of mirrors being given to women in the Etruscan world, I think in the Roman world as well, and in the Greek world, and even in going all the way back to like Cycladic culture in the Bronze Age, is we see these essentially bronze mirrors given in burial contexts, and we deduce that usually it's women. We can't actually tell. I've been watching a lot of Bones lately, and the amount of times this woman's like, "This is a 35-year-old man." I'm like, you can't tell that.
Well, and it's like that the mirrors thing being women is again is more that long-standing. It's like it's like, oh, ladies would look at the mirror more than men, so of course these are women. It's like, no, you could say like, well, it's a person with the mirror, but it just it reminds me of like when they'll find two corpses like embracing, and they're like either they're roommates or there has to be a male and female. There's no alternative.
Yeah. Or if they find a body that has like weapons with them, and they
has
automatically
to be a warrior.
assume has to be a warrior, has to be a man.
No
and then like
question.
they actually spend time with the bones, and they're like, actually, this is probably female. It's like, women can have knives too.
Huh.
And in fact, maybe we should let women have knives a little bit more.
Yeah, I second that.
It's not a threat. It's a promise. So after the initial preparations of the body, immediately after death, the next big thing is mourning and lamentation. And this was a big deal.
Big. This is like one of the only things I know about funerary practices.
Yes. So the way the people who survive react is so much more important than some of the rituals that need to be done, which is hilarious.
So interesting,
honestly.
yeah.
And we also, fun fact, have so many images, especially from like the geometric period from pottery of people mourning.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to see.
And so many scenes in tragedy. Like, we have so many. And the I mean the Iliad for sure, the Homeric text broadly. But like just this idea of like the wailing and the tearing at your hair and like all like that is so iconically
important.
Yeah, it's just
that is how you mourn.
Yeah.
You don't mourn through just crying and having an emotional break. You mourn by tearing your hair out and beating your head and scratching your nails down your face. Like, it is a very physical thing.
Yeah, and violent.
Which,
and even.
I kind of like it because it feels more accurate to what mourning feels like and what grief feels like. Like, it is such like it is such a vivid depiction of what you're going through when you have loss. And I'm like, I love that they just allowed this to happen. I mean, technically it was supposed to be women who were doing this, really, mostly.
But Achilles shows us that it wasn't always.
Because Achilles was the bottom. Like, that's...
I mean, you're not wrong.
I know.
But Aeschylus would say you are.
Yeah, Aeschylus can go away. So men would also be depicted on the vases. So we get the images of women on the vases beating at their heads and whipping their hair, but we also get images of men. Often they would be in procession with ritual gestures. So, and then interestingly, there was also this idea of they would come to the bodies and they would call the deceased by their name, and it was like it was a very intimate. It was seen as a very intimate thing to do. It's like a way to emotionally connect with the deceased for the last time. So I find that interesting, where they're also asking men to have this emotional connection with the body, and it's like go up to them, you speak into their ear, you say whatever you have to say, you call them by their name. I don't know. That's kind of sweet.
No, it's interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very personal in a nice way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So during mourning, not only would there be the very obvious displays of mourning, there'd also be singing, wailing, flute playing. Grief was encouraged to be expressed. And the extent that mourning and grief was expected to be displayed could be honestly, like a whole episode by itself. Like I want, if there's a scholar out there who works on mourning and grief in antiquity, send us a message, because it is wild. The extent to mourning is like important and dramatic too, which is, it's the Greeks. They were a dramatic bunch, and I appreciate them for that.
The inventors of theater were a dramatic people.
I know it's a wild thing to say, but this is the conclusions I've come to.
They're not at all dramatic now. No, not at all.
No. I don't know. I'm being
sarcastic. I'm being sarcastic.
Okay, I missed that. I was just like, that's a wild thing to say.
Greek people are iconic. Like they're
best.
It's just the most Greek. I fucking love it.
It makes me very happy. So after the mourning, well, during the mourning, but after the initial period of the body being in the home, you have the ekphora, or the funeral procession. Greek religion, they love a procession. They love a parade.
That's on pottery everywhere.
It's like if they can have any excuse for a procession, they will do it, and that's fair. Best life. They do it with the dead body. So after the period time of Solon in Athens, this would take place on the third day after death, probably to ensure that the body's actually dead. Don't bury someone alive.
They learn pretty quickly.
In earlier time periods, it was quite the affair. So it could be large crowds of people accompanying the deceased to the grave, wailing and grieving the whole way. People would know that someone had died. It would just, you have screaming women in the street. It's like, okay, someone's died. And there's also like an indication that like before people died, they would hire women to grieve for them at their funeral procession.
I mean, I can see that. I can see that.
You just throw some money around and pay 20 women to, when you die, to just scream in the streets
because like I mean, especially for like the like highborn Athenian man who's like really concerned with that. Like, what if no one did? Like, you gotta prepare.
Yep. It makes them look important.
Yeah.
A little more important than they perhaps were.
Yeah. And humans have always wanted to look more important than they are.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
For eternity.
It's fair. Let them live. So after Solon, though, he restricted this level of extravagance. I think he really was just trying to have it so that the funeral procession was really just the family. And to cut back on conspicuous consumption. We see this pop up all the time in antiquity, sort of ways to cut back on rich people showing how rich they are, and it never works. But
what an idea.
We should encourage them to spend more money is what I think we should do.
We should encourage them to give more money and become less rich.
Yep. Spend the money.
Yeah.
Don't
hold on people.
Give them tax breaks. They can pay. They can do what the Greeks did this, and the Romans did this too. Get a really rich person to pay for us all to have a holiday.
I think about this all the time because I'm making decent money and I'm not trying to dodge taxes, even though our taxes pay for the bombing of children. But like, and then I think about the like Galen Westons of it all, and I'm probably paying like the same amount, if not more, in taxes than fucking those people. Yeah.
Yeah. So there isn't many depictions of processions on vases. They do appear, but it doesn't seem to be as exciting as the actual dead body on a bed and people screaming around it.
Interesting, because I feel like there's a ton of like wedding processions on pottery.
Yes. Yeah.
And
that's more
like
exciting.
maybe and I guess maybe more like festival processions, but not funerary. That's interesting.
Not as many funerary. Lots of dead people, but you know, when we do see them, we often usually just see a body being wheeled out with chariots and mourners surrounding it, women tearing at their hair and screaming. And the procession would lead from the entrance of the family home to where the body would either be buried or cremated. So the preference, I said this earlier, the preference for inhumation and cremation, it swings back and forth so wildly. It's like there is no good pattern for it in my mind.
So there just like isn't a preference really.
Yeah, it just kind of, I think it's more like what's in trend is how I see it, and how that changes throughout time. Like that happens with us as well. Cremation is always expensive. And when we talk about cremation in antiquity, it is not cremation as we have it now. Like cremation now is, we have ovens that can get hot enough that it can burn through bone.
Yeah.
And then also what they do, I don't know if you know this, but after a body is cremated, they also go in and like smash up any leftover bits that haven't actually, like they will smash the shit out of grandma's bones so that it becomes ash. Because honestly, who wants to be given a bag and then it's like, oh, cool,
chunky?
That's
I don't want a chunky bag of remains.
Why do I see a bone? You don't want to see the bone. It's just, but however, in antiquity, you would be seeing the bones.
Yeah.
They just, there's no way to get a fire hot enough to burn bones to ash in antiquity easily.
Right. Yeah.
And they're not going to go in and start beating the shit out of grandma after they're dead, because that for them would be very bad. That
would, yeah. Yeah.
This is why people don't know that we do that now, because and now I'm broadcasting it. So.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there like the key is that you just don't want to know that it happened to your family member.
No,
right? Like
it's upsetting.
Yeah, you don't need to know that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when bodies were cremated, it would be ash and bones. And then you kind of just put them in a pot, you put a little lid on it, and you're like, ta-da! That's how it is. So we get some really interesting things. There's a burial that was from Athens, from the Archaic period, I want to say. Oh my god, I'm trying to remember the dates for this burial. Earlier, it's coming out of the Iron Age. It's called the rich Athenian lady, because she was rich.
Yeah.
But she was cremated and put in a pot. And we have all her bones, and interestingly, we also found fetal bones. So she was either pregnant at the time of death, or had given birth and her and the child didn't survive.
Yeah.
So it's, fun.
Yeah.
I guess. we still get information from cremations, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. It's fun for people like us. It's fine. Just because you said Athens too, like I just want everyone to know, if you go to Athens, you really need to go to the Kerameikos ancient cemetery site. It's like one of the ones that's included in like the combo ticket if you just spend the extra little bit with the Acropolis and you get access to all the sites. Kerameikos is amazing. It's mostly just like this big park with a bunch of ruins, but really incredible funerary stuff, and also really great wildlife. It's one of my favorite places to go for wildlife. If you go in September, I'm willing to bet you will see tortoises trying to fuck. I'm not joking. You'll see tortoises regardless, but in September, I have learned they are fucking.
They got stuff going on then.
They do. I have seen
each other.
more attempted, not actual attempted threesomes, but like literally fights between two males over one female. I have seen that like 5 times between the Agora and Kerameikos just over the months of September, like a couple of years in a row.
And
anyway,
the
sorry.
nice thing,
Kerameikos is amazing.
Yeah, the nice thing about Kerameikos as well is you can see the base of the Dipleon Gate, which is pretty fun.
Yes.
As well. I like that. So,
no, historically, it's a
big
great site, and it's just beautiful, and it's really understated.
Yes, because graveyards would be outside of the city, so it
Yeah.
was outside of the city walls originally, and as time grew on, it kind of we enveloped it. I find that really interesting when you look at Mycenae, though, because Grave Circle A is inside. And I believe we've even found, if I'm remembering correctly, there are other Mycenaean sites where they have some of their grave areas are inside the city walls. And like Grave Circle A, it was there before the walls were built, so they purposely built the wall to include this grave circle. And that's really interesting because all throughout antiquity, otherwise in, the archaic, classical, Hellenistic, Roman period beyond, you would never have a burial site within the city limits. It would always be outside.
That is interesting. But like that, to go back to the Kerameikos thing too, because the Dipleon Gate, like the reason, or the wall, the reason it's there is that they, like, it was on the outside, and then the Persians attacked, and in a pinch, like it's the Themistoclean wall, also called that, right? Like so like Themistocles, like in a pinch, was like, we have to, and they like used pieces of other graves to build this wall quickly because they were like fucked. And so it's really interesting because it is like this awkward wall that's like right in the middle of an ancient cemetery, because all of these different things led up to that, and it's very cool.
So when it comes to inhumation in earlier periods, bodies were usually simply placed into the ground, wrapped in a shroud, sometimes on a bed of leaves. Later there are coffins, but it doesn't really seem to be a requirement. I really think you could kind of just throw a body in a hole if you so wished.
I feel like they
remains.
Sorry, it's interesting. They just feel like they really were kind of, they just didn't, as soon as the person was gone, they were gone. And I respect that.
And you treat the body with respect, but I think it culturally we have different understandings of what that looks like for them. Like when I say throw it in a hole, I don't literally think they would just kind of like roll it into the hole.
They were kind to it, but it just didn't matter whether it was in a coffin or not.
And coffins were expensive. And it really depends on what you have, what you can afford. And there are other things that are a little bit more important to pay for, maybe in some ways. And it's just about what is available to each individual family, which I guess is true for now, even. I just feel like there's a higher
expectation of like, you're doing wrong if you can't afford like a ton of stuff. And I mean, maybe it was like that back then too, but I like seeing this idea of like, hopefully they were going kind of within their means in order to honor the dead.
And I think it's gonna be different to comparing a like urban site to more of a rural site.
Absolutely,
in urban sites, you are more likely to, I would think, want to have a bit more of a show going on. There's a lot of people there who could see, so you want to put on a bit of an extravagance compared to a rural site, especially if you're really in an area where it's maybe just you, extended family, and a few other people. You're more likely to go bury them somewhere close by and really simple, because it's just about what works for the family. If a cremated body would still also be buried, they did not keep the cremations like we do. There is no grandma on the mantle in ancient Greece. Grandma is in the pot in the ground. Like, she's not sticking around. They don't want a dead body in their home longer than they need it to be.
Respect.
It's fair. There's a polluting, but there's a pollution aspect to it. Death is polluting at the end of the day. Even, killing of animals is I mean, they sometimes kill dogs to purify an area, which I don't appreciate.
No,
But
they also
you
they'll
know,
bury dogs in cemeteries because they love them so much. So
Margarita, I
is
miss
that
her. Is it Margarita was it's so Margarita is Latin, it means pearl. But there is a grave stele. I want to say it's from the south of France, but I could be very wrong. There is a grave stele to a little white dog named Margarita that someone left, talking about how much they loved her and like she would sit on their lap and all these things. There's another one that gets me. I don't know where the other one was found, but on it these are Roman ones too, because apparently those are the ones that stick in my mind. But there's a grave stele to a dog that says, I carried you here today, just as I carried you into my home the first time when you were a baby, you were a puppy. And I was like, oh God. So we've always felt this way about our dogs. This is good to know. But that's fine. So yeah, so cremated remains would still be buried. This is still important. People would then leave all sorts of offerings with the deceased individuals. This would include jewelry, precious metals and stones, pottery, weapons, terracotta wares. Goes on and on and on. There's literally no limit. Just leave what you can, I guess.
Yeah.
It has been noted that often there were more grave goods found with bodies that were cremated, interestingly. I think it has to do with wealth.
Yeah, cost of cremation
is cremation is more expensive. I don't think it is nowadays, actually. I think actual burial is more
I would
expensive
assume so,
now.
Yeah.
Well,
logistically,
I know where I'm going to be buried.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's
you
on
have a
Salt
tomb
Spring Island.
Aw.
No, I'm going to pay for it eventually because when I die, I don't want my people to have to pay for it. But it's a natural graveyard. They will literally just throw your body into a hole.
Oh,
and
on
that's
Salt
what
Spring.
I want. Yeah. Let me feed
nice.
the earth. I want to be worm food. It's nice.
And Salt Spring's a lovely place.
Oh, it's great.
To remain.
I love Salt Spring. I know. I've already visited the cemetery because it's me. I like cemeteries. It's fine. It's not weird. It's normal. So likely at the tomb there was some sort of ceremony that would mark the end of it all. Perhaps relatives pouring a libation of sort. Libations were incredibly popular for death or anything related to deceased bodies or anything chthonic, because they were easy to get into the ground.
Yeah, you're like feeding the earth with it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
There are even some Greek and Roman tombs. This is really fun. Greek and Roman tombs that have pipes that lead from the earth to where the body is. So you could directly pour a libation in that would go straight to their body.
They're just giving them like wine straight to the
yes!
corpse. Oh, I respect that so much.
Just throw a little bit of olive oil down there. It's important. Grave could be marked with a number of things, large pot, marble stelae. Stelae often could have a number of scenes on it. There was no sort of canon for what was best, but often the focus of it seemed to be on the person who was buried themselves.
Picturing some from Kerameikos.
Yeah, so we see young men in military contexts, or sometimes they'll even have like a wound on them, and there's the indication of this is the wound that killed them. Or in sport contexts, there's birthing scenes. There is I did a whole project on birth in antiquity, and how I got my depictions were from stelae, because there are so many scenes of women giving birth on steles. That's what took them out.
Yeah.
Happens. Women and men with their families. So often the deceased would be like sitting down, and then their family would be standing around them.
Mm-hmm.
Young girls would be depicted in wedding clothing. So we get that sense that they didn't actually get to this point in their life.
Right.
And
that was like the next step. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's sort of like they get to have it in the next life, or in whatever happens next. And I really enjoy the things I love about these stelae and what they depict is I really enjoy that the focus is on the individual and not some like larger religious context.
Yeah.
Like I said, I love graveyards. This is if you ever are in Italy, go to an Italian graveyard. It is amazing. They will have on the gravestones they will have a picture of the person.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. I went to a cemetery in the south of France in this little town
Mm.
called Pézenas, but we just happened by it when I was there a few years ago. And yeah, it was also incredible. Just like the history over, in Europe as compared to the
Yeah.
colonial
And
cemeteries here.
I just really enjoy being able to walk around. I mean, I love walking around cemeteries.
To the listeners also, before Michaela and I knew each other, we lived on
Yes!
for the first year that I was back in BC and like the year that I started the podcast, we lived on opposite ends of this like enormous cemetery in Vancouver. Like I lived at the south end and she lived at the north end, but like otherwise, like basically
It's
like
wild.
neighbors. It was really cute. Yeah.
That's really insane.
And I used to smoke weed in that cemetery like every evening.
I used to walk the pugs.
There you go. And see, but I was in like the
saw?
little satellite one because there's a little satellite one south of 41st.
Yep.
And that's the one that was really close to my house. So
yeah, and I was in the one right off 33rd.
There we
right
go.
There. Oh, but
that's some niche Vancouver to you all.
They'll know it if they're from here. They'll
Pleasant. I was just moved away. I mean, we don't, but neither of us still live there. Yeah,
Mount Pleasant. Yeah, no, I don't live there anymore. No. It's
Thank
fine.
Fuck.
Yeah, yes,
both of us.
It was okay.
Thank fuck.
It could have been better. It could have been worse. At least there was a graveyard.
That's so true. So true.
There's no graveyards by me now, and I yearn for the grave. I really do.
Oh,
graves. So after burial, at least in the classical period, there is the paradipnon, or the final funeral banquet. The wake, I guess. And it would close out all the ceremonies around death. Because when you are doing all these ceremonies around death, your life is in a different state, right? You're not, life isn't as normal. You are in mourning. We have our mourning periods. A widow will wear a black dress for a year or something. I don't know what the rules are.
Yeah.
So, but this paradipnon would close it off. It would be held in the household of the deceased, and it was a way for all the relatives to come together one last time and show support for each other, and as, like I said, an official way to mark going back to life as normal.
I don't know enough about Jewish tradition to say this confidently, but it sounds more like something out of, like, I read a novel once that was like about sitting Shiva, which I don't know enough about, but it just like sounds to me more like, which makes sense because the religion's coming from a similar time period. But yeah, it sounds more similar to that than kind of anything that I ever experienced in a pseudo Christian, quote unquote, upbringing. And
it's really interesting. These meals are really important, and you see people actually will like, because you're still supposed to throughout the year do certain ceremonies on certain days from like after the death, like on the third day is when you actually bury, and then like the 19th day you do something, and then so on and so forth for a full year. And people would also continuously throughout time, you're supposed to still take care of the grave, and this is often like the women of the family would go to the grave and take care of it, clean it up, leave some sort of offering, make it pretty. They tie little like fillets, little ribbons on things because they love doing that. That was a ritual thing. And also you would continue to remember your family by going to them, and they would like share meals with the deceased person, in the sense that they would like eat a meal at the grave. And in the Roman period, we have grave sites where there's literally, because the ancient Greeks and Romans, they ate their meals on beds, laying down, not sitting upright. So you can go to Greek or
not
Roman
messy
cemeteries.
At all. The popcorn I find in my bed just from a little bit of snacking, and these people are lounging and eating.
I know, it's wild. I mean, it was like kind of at like an incline, but like still,
like a little more like a chaise lounge. I feel like from the imagery,
But there's like Roman graves you can find that have these beds built into the front of them, so your family could come back, clean it off, they all lay down, and they have a meal. And it was like you were sharing your deceased family member in with the meal for another time again. And you keep going, kind of like Dia de los Muertos, where you every year you're still remembering the people who have come before, and who are no longer here with us. Same.
Not to bring it down, but just throughout this conversation, I've just been reminded that we're about a week off from when I found out that my
Oh God.
childhood / teenage, a year from when my childhood / teenage best friend who I was completely estranged with, and it's the most terrible story. And also she was my spookiest friend. We would have gone to the Ross Bay Cemetery. That's something that got cut out earlier. But anyway, she died about a year ago, and thank you. I'm sort of remembering that. I'm laughing because it's the most. I mean, she died like a month before then Lupin did, so I just the most fucked up experiences of my life. Not least, you have like the details. In any case,
I remember.
Thank you, though. Yeah. It began the year that was the year, but but it's honestly even like talking about that though is nice to have this reminder. Like I'm appreciating that I'm being reminded that it's been almost a year just by this conversation. It's
It is. I think it's important. It's one of those things where we see this in antiquity, like that this was so important for them then, and it's still important now. It's one of those things I love where it's that human, the humanness that kind of spans across time, where you see this is so important for us. Remembering the people who we were close to who are no longer here or who came before us. Like it is a very human thing to feel super connected to that and to not want to let go of that or forget it. And to just keep it around. Like I have things, like I have my grandparents' wedding photo up in the room, and they're both passed away now, but I get to see them every day. And, I wear my Nokomis, my grandmother on my mom's side. I wear her wedding ring I can speak, wedding ring
me too.
and engagement ring. I wear that, and it's just a way I can keep her close to me. And then I also, this, I have my 2 necklaces that I wear. I'm not wearing them today, but I have these 2 necklaces I wear. And one of them has the ashes of my dog Zero in it. And then the other one has the ashes of my other dog Zoe in it. Some of them. And it's just, I get to keep them close at hand. And I think it's an important thing. But, also sometimes grandma ends up in the closet, which is something some family members forget.
I mean, I have such complicated feelings about this because I didn't get Lupin's ashes because I was so emotional, because it was like one of those times where I tried and tried and tried, and then at 11:30 at night we had to rush him to the hospital, and an hour later I had to make the choice, and then they're like, do you want, and I was like, I don't, the idea of him coming back like that was going to kill me. And so I have like such complicated feelings because I don't have those, and now I'm like, I wouldn't have wanted the whole thing because that it feels like too much pressure, and it's also like I don't need, like, he's gone.
Oh, I'm scared of the idea of the shelf of ashes. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, I have so many animals. I have to at some point choose who's staying and who's going.
Well, yeah, and so I'm just like, okay, I'm okay that I didn't get it, but one thing I did do, and so hearing you talk about your jewelry, and you know what, if any listeners have suggestions for this, Jenny Williamson, of course, sent me one and gave me the idea, but it was like a very expensive American, and I would just love to have, if there's a Canadian option for something like this. But I kept Lupin's whiskers in a way that was like very unhinged during
I do
his
it with
lifetime.
Crow too.
Good.
I have a jar of Crow's whiskers.
Well, and like, but Lupin's were like 4 inches, like, or 5 inches long. They're the longest. I've never seen a cat with longer whiskers than him. They would like stand out. They're like big and long and curly. And so I have like an enormous number of his whiskers. And so I want to get something like that made, like some piece of jewelry with, I mean, honestly, like the volume of whiskers I have, I could make like a tiny cat. But like jewelry would be great. And I've already started keeping squids for the same reason. So anyway, yeah, it's just like, but it is nice. Yeah. It's nice to have that connection, like, yeah. And I think it's a nice reminder, and I've been thinking about this a lot, but I'm trying not to, like, I have, on and off mental health, but like, I just think that it is a really great reminder of like the importance of just like general humanity and respect for the dead, and what what is happening in the world right now is the exact opposite of that. Like, not least all of the mass murdering of innocent people, but particularly also, like, you know, if you can justify the mass murdering, which is I know people can, I cannot, but like the treatment afterwards, even, you know, like refugee camps where people are completely burned to ashes, or the image that came out of the hospital that Israel recently bombed, where a person burned alive with the ICU, or with the thing still in his arm. Anyway, so I think we need to go back to this idea that, like, humans are fucking humans, and like, you know, say what you want about war. This isn't one, it's an extermination, but it say what you want about war, but like the respect for human decency, and like we're all kind of forgetting that everyone is fucking human right now, no matter you know, what color their skin is, or whether they're Muslim, like,
whether what they follow, what they do in their life. There is, and like,
but we're all human. Can we like, I mean, ceasefire now, everything like that's we need so much more than a ceasefire, but like, just the little bit of human fucking empathy to recognize that these are real human beings.
That
they're wiping out entire families.
Child, that's somebody's
how they do it.
Brother, sister, mother, father, grandfather. Like, somebody loves that person. How would, like, just put yourself in that position.
But we've reached this point where they're just so dehumanized that, like, that's like the basic step is, like, first off, Palestinians and Lebanese people are human. Let's go from there.
And just stop. There's no argument.
No, like, they're human.
Let's just state the fact. Like, anyways.
Anyway, sorry. We waited to the end, guys. You're welcome.
All, right, so, all the love. Yay, death.
Yay, natural death that is then honored by the humans around.
Yes.
Because we're all human and deserve
grandma out of the closet.
Yes. Don't
out of the Safeway plastic bag. Put her somewhere good.
That, my friends, was Hermes Historia. No, but for real, like, we didn't fully get to say it because we recorded the first two up front, but like, this is, I think, going to be really fun. To the listeners, we're going to get Michaela a better microphone. I promise. Sorry. No, and I'm so sorry because I should have done it already, but
I only have this mic for gaming.
Well, and I'm, you know, you're going to get one, but I'm in the process of preparing for a move that is going to take 7 to 8 days of driving. So, you know, also a thing that I will announce publicly once I get there, the crazy, ridiculous thing I did.
And I'll come hang out at your place.
No one will be surprised. Driving. In any case, so, you know, there's a lot going on, but we will be upping the quality, particularly once we're charging for this. We're still working out the details of the subscription, mostly because we're going to try to be doing everything on our own, and it's going to be really great going forward. So until then, you get these free ones, and we're finding our stride. If you're listening on Spotify, comment, because a bunch of people commented on the first two, and it made me so excited. Michaela's making a face, but I know she loves it. She just is like me 7 years ago when I had trouble taking any kind of, I mean, I'm still not great at taking
just give
praise.
me 7 years.
But I have a lot of experience on her, so we'll get there.
I'm
trying to think if I need to read any credits, but you're on with me, so obviously this was written by Michaela. It was like you just heard her read it. So
it's me.
It
Michaela.
is.
Penguish.
Michaela, do you have? You do. Michaela Penguish, you exist. Do you have a catchphrase for the end of this episode? Do you want to sign off? I'm Liv, and I won't say my catchphrase because this is Michaela's episode.
I'm Michaela, and I love this shit. Is that what we're doing?
I was just putting you on the spot and trying to make you come up with one.
Give me a couple weeks to make me think. I'm not that creative.
That one works for now. I mean, you think that mine was creative and not just the first thing that came out of my mouth? Do you think that?
So mine's going to be, I love this shit with a question mark.
Honestly, that's how we got this entire fucking podcast. The title, first thing that came to my mind.
We'll figure it out for November.
First thing that came to my mind. And somebody messaged me and they were like, I like it. And I was like, I guess I'm going to do it every time.
Beautiful.
You're all welcome.
Great.